Welcome to EFT Nation, your home for all things tapping. For show notes and resources, please visit EFTtappingtraining.com. We are your tapping hosts. I'm Alina Frank.
And I'm Craig Wiener. The information provided in this podcast is not a substitute for counseling or medical advice. The information presented here is meant to inspire and educate listeners, but are not guarantees of any kind. So excited about today's show. Today we are focusing on EFT for self-help. And you know, one of the beautiful things about EFT is that it's not only used, with practitioners as far as clinically, but that it has the availability of being accessible for us to do it for ourselves, which is such a powerful part about EFT.
Right, which is how I started. I needed help for myself.
Yeah. And, why would somebody use it for self-help? Well, to regulate their emotions in any moment that they're feeling upset, defensive, reactive, that they want to use EFT to self-soothe themselves. And so a way for doing that is by doing their own tapping. But I want to make a distinction between EFT and tapping here.
Yeah,
right?
Please do.
So using EFT or emotional freedom techniques, especially the clinical form, is really a way of being able to have a specific protocol for tapping on certain points and saying certain things in a certain way. Yeah. And there is a protocol for that.
And so what we're saying is there is a protocol for that has been clinically researched.
Yes.
And validated.
Absolutely.
Yes. Versus tapping, which is a more generic term for all the variations out there that you'll see, which really haven't been thoroughly examined.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question then becomes for me is, when should somebody tap on themselves? When should somebody use EFT on their own body?
Right.
As opposed to working with somebody else and a clinician and a certified practitioner,
coach,
right?
Yeah.
Sure. And that's really, really important for both reasons of safety and efficacy.
Okay, so safety, because what's beautiful about EFT is that it goes really very, very deep, very fast. And what's dangerous about EFT is that it goes very, very, very deep, very, very quickly. And if you have a history of traumatic experiences in childhood, then you can kind of get overwhelmed.
Yeah, especially if you're tapping on something that feels connected to that. And the tricky part about that
how do you know?
Is that we don't always know.
Exactly.
It's not uncommon that people start using EFT on something that's current in their lives.
Right.
And all of a sudden they start remembering because it feels similar to traumatic times in their childhood, for example.
Right. Like somebody came to me that wanted to work on their website copy. They were feeling totally blocked and couldn't actually publish the website because they were so stuck in the wording to use for that homepage. And it turns out that the reason why, when we started doing EFT, was they made a connection between that and what their perpetrator said when they were a child getting sexually abused, were things like, I'll make you feel special, and those kinds of things were very close to what this person was trying to say on their website. So many times these things are completely unconscious to us.
So I would say the caveat then is, if you believe and feel that something is relevant and current and safe to work on, that you tap on it. But if you start to go to a place where it starts to feel overwhelming, then you should stop and really consider working with a practitioner. Sure. And I also wouldn't recommend that if you are somebody that has recently returned from war or something and been through significant traumatic experiences, you do not try doing EFT on yourself with that.
Right.
Right?
So can we at least say, like, a little bit about the difference between a big T traumas and traumas, just regular things that are bothering us? So natural disasters, combat, war, an accident.
What do you mean by an accident?
So
like a significant, right? Exactly.
A fall. What is sexual abuse and physical abuse, even a spanking. I would consider all of that big T traumas.
Correct, but that's not usually. Adults that are considering EFT aren't usually tapping on their spankings. So what I want to say is, most people doing EFT are going to be, I think, working on things that are happening in their current life.
Yes.
Right. So the events you want to tap on, the things you want to tap on, are probably happening in your life now and existing as problems.
Yes.
Right?
Right. So we just covered the safety part of when to do self-tapping. And then the efficacy, if the things that you're working on currently in your life just don't seem to go away, no matter how many times you're tapping on the stuff that's going on currently, then it might be that you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too close to the problem. And that's the place where hiring somebody who's skillful at asking you the right questions can really make all of it go away.
So, for example, if somebody has anxiety around speaking their truth,
Right.
right, and I can't speak up for myself
Right.
in my marriage or at work, etc.
Yep.
And I'm trying to tap on that because I get really anxious and nervous and constricted and whatever I describe. And I'm working at tapping on that. It improves a little bit.
Yeah.
But I start to realize this is a lifelong problem. I've had this for my whole life.
Right.
And it probably, I know when it started,
Right.
when that time happened and it was something pretty traumatic.
Right.
When I was young, where I learned that I can't speak up for myself
Yes.
or I would face the consequences.
Right.
That might not be something that you tap on yourself, and you start to work with somebody else to be able
Sure.
to hold a safe space for you.
Yeah, but I just want to underscore the idea that many of these things we will not find alone. We
Right.
really do benefit from hiring someone to even hold our hand, because I think that when the psyche is ready and feels safe is when these old memories will come up, and that happens in my experience more with a practitioner than with not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to divide up a little bit. Let's just talk about different ways of tapping and when.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just say that you're in, I want to talk about like how long should you tap and when do you tap, etc. Well, one might be, for example, you're in a situation where you're feeling scared, nervous, anxious about something, and you're just feeling highly agitated and emotional about it.
Right.
You can just start tapping. There's no right length of time to
Right.
tap for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc.
Yes.
And you could just tap. And if you're really tuned into that emotion in the moment and it's pretty intense, you could just tap on the points without even saying anything, because the words are what tune you in,
Exactly.
right? Knowing those phrases and what to say. But if you're highly agitated, emotional in a moment and dysregulated, just tapping on the points can start to calm you down.
Without even saying a word.
Without
Because
even
people
saying a
get
word.
hung up on what to say.
Yeah. So I call that like first aid tapping.
First aid tapping. Yep.
Right, in the
Yep.
moment. But let's just say that you're then wanting to tap on something that you're worried about that's coming up, or something you feel bad about. And you were going to actually give an example how somebody might tap on something that, for example, just happened. Like, let's say you're feeling strong emotions. We were talking about, for example, let's just say you're a parent and you got upset and you lost it and you yelled at your kid. And now
Sure.
you're feeling really, really bad
Right.
about that. And it's not that you're so emotional that you need to silently tap, but you're feeling really guilty and bad about what just happened.
Sure.
And you want to feel better.
Okay. So let's say the next day I realize, oh boy, I feel so much guilt about what happened yesterday. So I have an event, and this is what it almost takes a year for our students to like master, is the idea of we're tapping on events. So yesterday was an event. I yelled at my kid, and when I think about that, I'm feeling guilty today, right now, and that's all I can affect. So I'm gauging the level of guilt, 0 to 10. How strong is that guilt that I'm feeling about what happened yesterday? And so let's just say I'm looking back on yesterday and how I yelled at my kid. I am feeling an 8 of guilt. Now I do a body scan and I see, do I feel that guilt anywhere in my body? I might not, and that's okay. If I feel it, I'm going to include it in the setup statement. If I'm not feeling it anywhere in my body, I'm just going to leave that part alone. So let's say I don't really feel it anywhere, but I know it's there, and I feel an 8 guilt.
Okay.
And the way that it would sound, tapping on the side of my hand, would be, even though I feel all of this guilt, thinking about yesterday, I yelled at my kid, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then the rest of the points, I would tap this guilt, this guilt, this guilt, this guilt, this guilt, this guilt, this guilt. And tapping through all the rest of the points, and we call that a reminder phrase. And then I check in again, and where am I on that 0 to 10 scale? Well, now I'm a 4. I'm going to go back to doing the same thing, even though I feel this guilt. Thinking about what happened yesterday, I yelled at my kid. I deeply and completely accept myself. And I would do round after round after round on that till I get to a 0. Now, let's say I get to a 0, but now I'm feeling, boy, I'm feeling kind of sad that that happened. It's a different emotion, and I'm going to stop and I'm going to gauge 0 to 10 on that sadness that I'm feeling now. Great, even though I feel this sadness that I yelled at my kid yesterday, I deeply, completely accept myself. That's what I would go to. Now with EFT, it's going to, what we call daisy chain. So I'm going to think of other times where I yelled at my kid or did something else with one of my kids or even my husband or someone else. And that I'm going to then gauge the next event 0 to 10 and tap on that. Now this is just like the bare bones, and we suggest that you go to our website efttappingtraining.com, sign up for these newsletter that we have there, and you will automatically get a chart and a quick start guide on how to get started on your self tapping. There are many variations that are clinical evidence based EFT. But this is just a quick and dirty guide, right?
Yeah. And so I just want to mention a few things about what you just did. That is what we would call the basic EFT shortcut.
Right.
Right? It's a very foundational kind of workhorse, but one of many the emotional freedom techniques,
Yes,
but kind of the
plural.
foundational.
Right.
Right? A few other things I wanted to just bring up in variations is you were tapping on a past event.
Yes.
Right? Like something that happened. But sometimes we're tapping on
Future event.
a future experience that hasn't happened yet, how
Yes.
I'm worried about something that's about to happen, or right here in this moment, I'm feeling something about something. So there are different ways that we look at the time frame, but it's always, as you said, about how I feel right now about it.
Right.
Right? So that's really important.
So then if I want to stop yelling at my child in this example, I may have to go to what it is that triggers me. And those triggers happen to be all about my personal history. So it could be that I was yelled at as a child. It could be that I wasn't listened to as a child. It could be a number of different things. And this is why EFT versus tapping is so incredibly effective, because it deals with my personal history. And for me to get back to what this is really about, what we call a core issue or core events, then I may not see it because I'm too close to it. And working with a practitioner would really help me just kind of end that pattern completely.
What happens, you were talking when you were doing that thing around about the guilt that you were feeling for yelling at your child, for example.
Yes.
And then you said, and I deeply and completely accept myself.
Yes, a variation is I'm okay, or I accept this is how I feel. Because believe me, if I'm feeling guilty, it's really hard to be congruent with the idea of I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay. So anyway, that's just a quick and dirty way of doing basic EFT shortcut.
Okay. And at this point, we were doing tapping on all the points.
Yes.
Right. But sometimes we might need to use some variations. What if I'm at work and feeling really upset? And it's going to look pretty darn silly for me tapping on my head and face in front of, let's say, in a meeting.
Yes.
With coworkers.
So the event is right now. I'm feeling it right now. And this is the event right now in the present moment. Then you could do stealth tapping, which is the idea that you can stimulate the points without people knowing. Either mentally, like you could actually, after a while of tapping and tapping, you have body memory on this. So you could focus on top of the head, eyebrow, side of the eye, under the eye, and you can actually feel the points. Or you could gently rub the points. And sometimes you can find one point that really works well for you. So, if I'm upset, I can just rub my collarbone point and no one will know what's going on. So rubbing the point, holding the point, tapping all your finger points. So if you put your fingertips to fingertips on your right and left hand together and gently tap like that, people don't really know what you're doing, but you're activating points.
Yeah, I like the one, the kind of the energetic imagining tapping on the points. That's especially useful, I found. For example, if you're awake and you're trying to use tapping to calm down and go back to sleep, and you got a partner next to you, and you don't want to rock the bed by all that movement, then you can just do imaginary tapping.
Right.
Once you've done enough tapping, and you can kind of feel and sense that.
Right.
So that's great to know that there's variations. We're going to be doing in the future tapping and getting more specific on different kinds of situations, right?
Right, on different topics and subjects and ways that you can just really transform your life in all these different ways.
So what kind of topics will we be covering tapping on?
Well, we were going to cover in a future episode working with relationships. So, other people, your family, your coworkers, your romantic partner, sex and intimacy issues. That's, this is all my wheelhouse.
Your bailiwick. There
It
we go.
is.
And mine is definitely physical conditions.
Yep.
So chronic conditions, pain, etc. We'll also, of course, talk more about, there's so many things, psychological, emotional well-being and regulation. So
Yeah.
different ways of working with that. We'll also be talking about money issues, whether it has to do with work and vocation or abundance and success.
Yep. Spiritual connection. So there are ways to unblock your lack of that ability to connect to all that is.
And breaking old patterns and new ones, whether they be cravings, addictions, things that you seem like you can't stop doing to create a new pattern in your life that just keep rolling forward and you're wanting change. And New Year's resolutions kind of don't cut it and make a difference.
Yeah. So I hope that we've helped you understand that, this is something very easy that you can start doing on your own today. Gary Craig, the founder who I trained with originally, he used to say that the only way to really fail at EFT is to not do EFT. And so, but I want to say he wrote an article called the Sea of disheartened or discontented people out there that are trying tapping, which I believe is EFT light, LITE, and they really don't understand the difference between tapping and EFT, which addresses your personal history. And the difference makes it really does. It's just so much better. It's so much more effective. And if you're out there tapping and tapping and tapping and not getting results, really transforming your life, it's because you might be doing something that you've seen on the internet without really understanding that EFT, real clinical research-based EFT, is all about addressing one's personal history. Because even if you're feeling bad right now, current, or you're tapping on something future, guess what it's related to? Your past history. Anyway, any final thoughts on self-tapping?
Do it, right? In other words, even practitioners I work with all the time, once they start getting a habit, a pattern of doing it, it's amazing how quickly change can start to happen with something that you've been struggling with. Right. So it's worth a try, finding out what works for you.
Yeah.
You're welcome to contact us and ask questions, and just do it.
Yeah, absolutely, just do it. And I think we're going to cover in a future episode too an actual process, a very structured process for working on yourself in a deep way. And that's known as the personal peace procedure. So we're going to cover that too, because I think that's really important.
Okay. I agree. Thanks for joining us today at EFT Nation. And remember that you can find show notes and previous episodes at EFTtappingtraining.com.